I was a very picky eater before my mission. I liked meat, potatoes, and bread. And my mom said, I hope you go somewhere foreign where they can really expand your palate. And I said, okay. And so I got down there, and rice and beans, I didn't really like rice and beans before my mission either, but now I love it. I can't live without them. But they had this one food that would be kind of like the lasagna of America, where everyone eats lasagna here. They all love it. There they call it feijoada. And it's so common. And it's like, it was a slave food originally, because the slaves would cook for their masters, and they would give them all the good parts of the pig, like the bacon, the hindquarters, everything that was good about the pig, they would give to their masters, and what was left over, they would make their food out of. So like the snout, the tongue, the ear, the tail, the foot, all that they threw into a pot and cooked it. And that became feijoada. And now most of Brazilians are descendants from slaves, so they eat this food called feijoada. And I remember my first time eating the MTC, and it was all rubbery because it's mostly fat, and I just like, oh, I cannot eat this for 2 years. I would fast that day in the MTC because I didn't want to eat that food. But now I love it. I loved it as soon as I got out to the mission field, and it was different because different people liked different ways. They would like, oh, I like mine with a little pig's foot, and other people, oh, I don't like pig's foot, it's too heavy for me. And it was interesting to see how they would talk about their food, and I remember they don't waste anything. Any part of the animal they use, like, I had never eaten cow's foot before in my entire life, and there I got it, and it's called mokoto. And there are different ways to prepare it, but the most common is they make it into a broth, like a very sweet soup, like the ligaments and everything, it'll get all cooked together, and at least this really nice soup. My first time eating mokoto, the member literally just took a cow's foot and cooked it. So I'm sitting there, I'm starving, and I have my rice and beans ready, and she just, bam, cow's foot. Just an actual, like, you picture cow's foot in real life, put that on a plate. And I looked at my companion, I go, Elder, we're going to eat this? He's like, with a smile on your face, Elder. And so it's just, different people interpret the foods there differently. And so I ate it, and it was not the best food I've ever eaten. But then I got the other mokoto where they make it into like a soup, and I loved it. And so it was very different to see the different types of foods that they would make. I mean, I ate chicken's feet. I've eaten every single part of a pig you can imagine. I've eaten bull's intestines with their tongues cooked inside of it, and it sounds gross, but it's really good. And it's totally different to come back home and to be totally fearless in eating any kind of food. If you don't tell me what it is, I'll eat it. And so my favorite food, I think, that I learned was, I think feijoada was probably my favorite. But what was interesting is that there, if you offer someone an egg, like a fried egg, you are calling that person poor, because eggs down there are for only poor people. They're very cheap. And so if you only eat eggs, you are poor. And for us missionaries, we were poor, so we loved it. And so we loved fried eggs and ground beef with bread. That's what we ate a lot of the times at home. Not in the members' houses, of course. And so it was very interesting when I remember when I would Skype my family, and they would say, really, eggs are for poor people down there? That's interesting. And so it's just different, because we would say, oh, food stamps are for people in poverty. I feel like that's what it would be in Brazil is, oh, you eat eggs and bread, you're on food stamps. And it's just a different way to see how they lived and how they categorized different foods. I remember I ate once in a very wealthy house. It was the most rich person I've ever met in my entire mission. And they had like this huge old table full of all this beautiful food, but no rice and beans, which is a staple food for them because it fills you up and it's very cheap. Every Brazilian eats rice and beans, but not the rich, because it's, I don't want to say beneath them, but it's just that they can buy higher quality things, like, I don't know, noodles, like very expensive pastas or something like that. They don't need rice and beans. And I remember sitting at this table and I felt out of place because there was no rice and beans. I was like, we left the house, like my companion, I go, are you still hungry? And he goes, yeah. And I go, because there were no rice and beans, we're not full. And it was very different. And the family would be sitting there and they'd be like, oh, I can't remember the last time I had rice and beans. And I was offended. I was like, I had rice and beans this morning with a fried egg. So I'm the poorest of the poor. But the food there, you can tell how humble a person is. Like, and they won't admit, if you meet a poor person on the street, they will give you the best of what they have. So if the best is what they have is a fried egg and ground beef, and they are offering that means they are very, very, very poor. And they were willing to give you anything. I remember in my first area in that favela, this lady we were teaching, she worked at a family's home in a very far away place, and she had to travel like 3 or 4 buses in a metro to get there. And I remember that night we were going to teach her, and she sat us down. She said, I have a surprise for you. And she goes in the kitchen, comes back out with her hands behind her back, and she pulls out 2 fruit drinks, one for me, one for my companion. And the eyes of her children just like got as big as dinner plates. Like, they wanted that drink. And she probably worked like an extra 5 or 6 hours to get that enough money to buy that drink for us. And it actually was a very terrible drink. It wasn't good at all, but I drank everything, and I gave the drink to her kids because I just couldn't stand having them look at me like that and not share. And that they would work so hard for someone, a foreigner, nonetheless, to come into their home, teach them a foreign doctrine, and then they would work that much harder just to buy us a little thing, and just to show their appreciation. And it was amazing to me.
Brazilian food. A staple at every meal is going to be beans and rice. If they don't have rice, they'll have beans and pasta, which is really strange at first, but it's actually really good. It's a little hard to manipulate with like a spoon and a fork, but really, really good food. So that's the basics of every Brazilian meal. And even if you go to a fancy restaurant, people will get beans and rice. That's just it's like water. You have to have it. Fruits are very just, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very abundant there. You find them all over the place. People make fresh juices all the time, and you won't want it any other way. They're delicious. And they just pretty much, they'll cut up a fruit, throw it in a blender with some sugar and water, and bam, it's delicious. You get some really fun fruits too, like star fruit and passion fruit, which is divine, but it's a natural kind of like, sedative in a sense. Like it's kind of like a natural sleeping pill in a sense. You drink it, and the next like hour is gonna be rough. Trying to like stay awake and tracked. Just like every fruit, there's like so many different fruits that I was kind of blown away. There's just all sorts of fun things. And then there's like meat. You generally have like a meat, dish with your meal, be it chicken or pork or beef. That's always nice. You gotta have your meat. You have some sort of like salad in a sense, which they always I guess garnish your salad with like olive oil and vinegar, or just olive oil and salt, which is so good. It sounds weird, but I do it to this day because it's so good. It's simple. There are some Brazilian foods which are different, just traditionally, Brazil has a really large African, I guess you could say African ancestry influence in this, a lot of during the slave trade, they brought a lot of Africans over to Brazil. And so Brazil has just rich culture. And one thing that Africans brought with them were kind of these like some interesting eating habits in a sense, like things like eating the cow stomach and like eating all the weird parts of like the pig, like the ears and the knuckles and the nose. And so a lot of these foods, which aren't really eaten a lot anymore, are kind of traditional in a sense. There's a really common food called feijoada, and it consists of like black beans mixed in with like pig ears and pig knuckles and all the weird parts of the animal that like no one would want, because that's what slaves ate. They ate the leftovers that no one wanted. But it's such a big part of Brazilian culture now that they make it, of course, nowadays, but they use like the good parts of the animals. They use like kind of like dehydrated meats to cook in there with it, so they don't like fall apart. It's super good. It's so good. Pretty much, I mean, of course, like every culture, there are kind of like rules and standards to how to interact, and refusing someone's food is super rude. So never do it. I don't care how picky you are or how hungry you might not be. Just eat it. You know. Yeah, that's kind of food in a nutshell.
I'll be honest. Brazilian food is incredible. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome food. It's honestly, coming back to America, that was one of the things that I missed, was the cuisine. And it's so simple, yet it's so good. With every meal, they have rice and beans. That's the staple. That, you know, they like to say that it's not a meal if it doesn't have rice and beans. You know, it's not almoço, you know, the lunch, which is the biggest meal of the day. It's not almoço if it doesn't have rice and beans. So that is an absolute must. That being said, you don't have to worry. Their rice and beans are fabulous. They're not like boring as you would think. You know, they actually they call it tempero, just like the spices that they make. A lot of times they'll flavor it with sausage, or they have this it's the yucca plant. They'll make flour out of that and fry it with bacon and olives and stuff like that, and it's called farofa. And you just put that on your beans, and it's delicious. It's so good. So I really learned to love rice and beans. Honestly, it's great, and it was, you know, obviously it takes a little getting used to, just, you know, gastronomically. I wasn't used to eating beans all the time, but it's fine. You know, you get used to it. I'm still thinking of the craziest thing I ate. But it's pretty normal. I mean, so the typical almoço has rice and beans, a protein, so either like a steak or chicken or something like that. You might have some pasta. They like to put in some pasta in there with tomato sauce, and always have a soda. Always with every meal, just refrigerante, and they love Coca-Cola. They love Guaraná, which is a Brazilian drink. Comes from a fruit in the Amazon. Really good soda. There's just great stuff. So the craziest thing that I think I ate is kind of their national, one of their like national prides in cuisine is this dish called feijoada, and basically it's rice and with a bean stew. So in this bean stew, you have black beans, and then basically all the undesirable parts of a pig or a cow. So you might have pig's foot, you might have, pig nose, something like that, in it, and so they make this big stew, and it just like slow cooks and with that stuff. You don't actually eat the bones and stuff like like a cow's foot. You wouldn't actually eat it. It just kind of like gives the beans some flavor, and they'll put like bay leaves in there and stuff, and so you put that on your rice, and then they've got this like seaweed stuff that's kind of weird, but you put it on there, and then some farofa, like I said, the yucca flour, and you've got yourself a great dish. Actually, it's really good. Like as weird as that just sounded, it's really delicious, and tastes really good. And it's uniquely Brazilian because it actually came from the slaves. in Brazil. So much like America, there were the Portuguese. They sent a lot of Africans over to Brazil to work the sugar cane plantations, and they were enslaved and everything. And the slaves couldn't get good meat, so they would get all the the parts that the white people didn't want. So they would put it in this stew and try to make a meal out of it. And so that's actually where it comes from, and it's now like the quintessential Brazil dish, and they're really proud of it too. That story I just told you about the slaves, you will hear that story as you eat that dish down in Brazil, because they all love to tell that, and it's a source of national pride. So that's really good. Acai is really good. Acai is another fruit in the Amazon, and they'll take that. It's actually really bitter, and they'll just like put tons of sugar in it and stuff, and make this kind of it's like a sorbet, only it's acai. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's deep purple, and it's really good. At first, when you first eat it, you're like, oh, this tastes weird, because the acai is so bitter and it's been like sweetened. But after a while, it just it grows on you, and you just love it. It's so good. With put some sweetened condensed milk on there. That's another thing. Brazilians love sweetened condensed milk. They put it on everything, all desserts. So you put some sweetened condensed milk on there, some granola, super good. So yeah, that's another one. So yeah, there's some great dishes there, and they also have they have McDonald's there and stuff like that, but it's really expensive, and people don't normally eat there all the time. It's kind of like a special occasion that you'll go to McDonald's and stuff. Another thing I should mention is the churrascaria. Here in America, we think of like Tucanos or something like that when we think of Brazilian barbecue, and that format of people coming to you with slabs of meat on a spoke or whatever, and cutting off a slice for you. That is authentic. That is called churrasco, and it's basically they just grill up great meat for you and serve it to you, and that's something that Brazilians love too. It's also a very special thing for them. Much like we wouldn't go to a barbecue, steakhouse every day. They don't go to a churrascaria every day either, but they do for like special occasions and stuff like that. And we went to a churrascaria a couple times, just on the mission, just a couple. It didn't happen all the time, but it was great. P-Day, to just go down there and all you can eat meat and stuff, and it's really good. Brazilians know how to cook their meat. They're the southern part of Brazil is Rio Grande do Sul. There's a lot of cattle raising there, a lot of ranches and stuff, and they are known for their meat. They actually, I heard once that the average Gaúcho eats more meat per day than an American. So there you go. Yeah, but great food. Definitely something to look forward to in Brazil.
I love the food. It's so good, especially in the south. A little bit more about Porto Alegre, or about Rio Grande do Sul. It's cowboy country. The Gaúchos are the cowboys. And so there's a lot of like plains and cattle. There are also some mountains. But their churrasco is really big there. It's their barbecue. And they have these spits that they put the meat on. It's like 2-pronged spits. And they put them on, and they put the meat on the spits, and they put some really big grains of salt on it. That's how they season it. And then they stick it, there's like the area where they grill or cook the meat is like there's a bar for the spit to rest on, and then there are two holes on the opposite side that the two prongs sit on. So you stick them in there, and you can flip them over every once in a while so that it gets cooked all the way through. But oh man, it was so good. It's pretty similar to Tucanos. If you're familiar with Tucanos, that's very similar to the churrasco in the areas I served in, which is really good. Beyond that, we had a lot of chicken and beans and rice and potato salad and cooked kale, and they also would do a lot of, everyone gave us desserts. I don't know if that was just because we were the missionaries and we were visiting, but the desserts were really good too. They had, I don't know what to call them in English, but we had mousse, and it was various flavors. It could be mousse de maracujá, which is like passion fruit, or morango, which is strawberry. Those were two of my favorites. They also had pudim, which is like flan, and I didn't think I was going to like it, but I ended up loving it. There's also arroz doce, which was a sweet rice, and I guess it's like rice pudding, but I'm not sure what rice pudding is otherwise. Something else about Porto Alegre. It's well known for the doces de Pelotas. Pelotas is a city, it's pretty close to Rio Grande, and they just make a ton of sweets there. A lot of sweets and jams and jellies and desserts, and they're really good. They're well known too. It's, I could keep going about the food. The food was so good. It was really yummy. I know that some people would get sick of beans and rice, but I miss beans and rice. It's so good. Beans and rice with some sort of meat. Most of the time it was chicken. And most people would have like a small salad, whether it was like tomatoes and lettuce or beets and carrots or any kind of a mixture of those, or I guess that was the main part. Sometimes they would have fruit, but not very often. They mostly had fruit as dessert. So it was good too. It was all really tasty. Oh, and I learned to love star fruit there. I hadn't ever had star fruit before, but in my last area, in Guaíba, there was a member who their family would give us, or would make us churrasco every time we ate at their house on Sunday. And there was one time where they said, "Hey, we have this star fruit tree. Have some star fruit." We're like, okay. So we started eating it on the road, and I was like, oh, this is some of the best fruit I've ever had. I love this. It was really good.
In Brazil, stereotypical food is rice and beans, and every meal you eat with a member, you will eat rice and beans. And in Brazil, they do take good care of the missionaries. You get fed every single day, and if an appointment falls through, they'll send money so you don't have to go without. And it got to the point where if I didn't eat rice and beans for lunch, which is the big meal in Brazil, that's their dinner, is lunch. If I didn't eat rice and beans, I didn't feel like I really ate. I kind of felt like I ate a light snack. And so the days that we would get money, we would make, macaroni, or we would do something for ourselves for lunch. But if we didn't have rice and beans, I don't know. I just didn't felt like I was really fed that day. I think that rice and beans was a great food. Definitely got used to it. It's good. There's a reason they love it so much. So it's not something that's going to be bland eating every day. And it definitely gives you the energy to really work hard and out in the sun. Had lots of good food experiences in Brazil. When they have their barbecues, something that's common is chicken heart, which I ended up liking a lot more than I thought I would. I remember one lunch, he had them all on like a shish kebab, and they were like 4 hearts to a stick, and I ate like 5 of those, and it was good. I don't know. Let's see. So we had chicken heart, we had liver, we had chicken lung, was something I had once, which I didn't particularly enjoy. I remember just cutting it up into really small pieces, mixing it up with the rest of my food, and then putting some hot sauce on it. Brazilians, we usually have hot sauce on the dinner table, and so That's something, if you don't like the food, you can always mask it with hot sauce and no one will get offended. They just think, oh, he just really likes hot sauce. So it's something that could get you out of a potentially embarrassing situation of not enjoying the food too much. So yeah, heart, lung, liver, feijoada is a meal. It's just this big stew and they just put everything in it. So there was pig snout and pigtail and pig ear in it. Pig ear was kind of fatty. And then also there's a food called mokoto, which is basically any meat that you can find within like the hoof of a cow. It's kind of like a lower quality meat, right? So it's what the poorer people would eat or what farmers would eat. But it's kind of more of like a delicacy. You know, people get, hey, you know, let's eat mokoto. Grandma used to make that for us. And so usually those types of things, they won't make for missionaries unless they request it. So all the times that I had liver or mokoto was something that they had talked to us about beforehand, and we planned it out like, yeah, like when we have lunch at your house, let's eat cow hoof. And it was definitely, you know, I don't know. You don't know what cow hoof tastes like until you taste it and you go, oh yeah, that's definitely cow hoof. I can see, there's no doubt in my mind, eating that again, I would be able to recognize that as cow hoof.
Oh, I love Brazilian food. So it's just like every meal, there's always, they basically have always rice, beans, a meat, and a salad. Always. And you're like, whoa. And sometimes a pasta. So lunches will be huge. So rice and beans, they have this special way of cooking rice where they saute the garlic and onions first and then put in the rice and fry the rice a little bit and then cook it and put water in it. And it's so good. And then their beans, they mix so much spices and not spicy spice, but just normal spices. And then it's also like the best beans I've probably ever had. And then the meat, they always get like steak, or usually it's steak. Sometimes it's chicken because the sisters are like, oh, we know you get steak and we know you guys like to keep your figures, so we're giving you chicken. And we're just like, thanks. And then always a pasta. And then their salad, they season it really differently. They put oil and vinegar and mix that with that and then put salt all over it. So I don't know if it's healthy, but it's salad and it tastes really good. And they have like street food. They have pão de queijo, which is like a cheese ball. It's a lot better than it sounds. So those are really good. There's coxinhas, which I don't know how to explain. Sometimes on the side they have a churrasquinha where they just sell meat and they put like either steak on a steak or chicken on a steak or chicken heart on a steak, which is actually really good. And then juices. Oh, every time you go into a sister's house, she'd be like, let me make fresh juice for you guys. So they always get like fresh lemons or fresh maracuja, which is a really good fruit. That's my favorite. And they'd always make fresh juice for you, and I loved it. Oh, I loved it so much. Oh, what else with the food? Oh, the buffets. They have like an all-you-can-eat buffet for like 5 to 10 reais. And it's amazing because that's only like $2 or $3 in the US. So you get all this really good food for like $2 or $3. So it's amazing. They really like their food there. And it's so good. So good.
Get used to rice and beans because you're going to have them every day. Most days, I should say. If you're in a particularly rich area, sometimes they have spaghetti instead of rice and beans, and that's pretty good. But still, most days you'll end up eating rice and beans. The members of the church will most likely feed you every day. They'll feed you a lunch. Most wards and branches have lunch calendars that they go around. In Belo Horizonte, when I was there, we were not allowed to eat dinner. We just ate a very large lunch with members at around noon, and we worked for 8 hours. And so get used to that too, because dinner is not a big deal in Brazil. It's extremely hard to teach during the lunch hour because everybody's making lunch, and nobody wants to really listen to a random visitor. But you won't find too much trouble teaching during dinner hours. because it's not quite as big of a meal. Most people just eat leftovers for their dinner, and so no one's really preparing a dinner. People have time to sit down and listen to you during the dinner hour. Interestingly enough, a lot of members would ask me, like, oh, have you had feijoada? And I'd say, yes, I've had feijoada. Every single member that's fed me has asked me that. It's this bean and pork dish that also goes over rice, but it's made with black beans and lots of interesting parts of the pig, like nose and the foot, and just lots of, like, the ears are sometimes in there. Lots of interesting parts of the pig, and it's really good. I've never actually eaten pig ear. Most of the times they'll take that out, but sometimes they'll cook it with it in. But even after a year and a half on mission, members were still asking me if I had eaten feijoada, and I was just, yes, sister, I've eaten feijoada. Guaraná is one of the most popular sodas in Brazil. Yeah, most likely you will be fed Guaraná at least 5 times a week for lunch. Just get used to that. People like Guaraná down there. Also, you should get used to large portions of meat. It's usually like rice, beans, and meat, and that's usually it. Rice, beans, and meat. And maybe they'll have a salad, but salad is not a salad. Salad usually consists of lettuce and tomatoes. That's not a salad, but whatever. They like to call it a salad, so we'll give them that.
So there is like the typical meal in Brazil, which is like what everybody eats every day when there's no special event, which is rice and beans, some kind of fried chicken or maybe like fried beef or something, and a salad. Salad could be anything from just a pile of tomatoes with olive oil and vinegar and salt on it, or it could be like lettuce and tomatoes. Usually it's kind of simple, but they like season things very simply there, but it's so good. Oh my gosh. I love rice and beans. I love it. I miss it so much. They'll do a lot of pasta too, because São Paulo is kind of like New York, where it's like kind of a mixing bowl. There's just a lot of people from different backgrounds there. So there's a lot of people with like Italian background. There's some people with like, I don't know, German background. There's some people who are from like the Northeast who have African descent. So you kind of get like everything mushed together. Sometimes like they have like these, they're called lancherias. It's just like a place you can go like on the side of the road. Sometimes it's like almost like a food truck. Sometimes it's like an actual building. And you just go and you can get different types of snacks, which are usually different types of baked or fried goods. And they have this thing called coxinha, which is the best thing in the world. It's like pulled chicken with like seasoning, and then they wrap it up in this ball of dough and fry it, and it is so delicious. They have some Arabic snacks, like things that they call esfihas, which are also like it's some kind of meat or some kind of flavoring in the middle, and then dough around it, but that's baked. They also do all these with like chocolate or like dulce de leche or whatever, and just sweet things. Pastel, which is like a calzone, except it's a thinner crust, and then just like something inside, and they fry it. It's so good. Like those things are the best. I miss them so much. Sometimes like for dessert, you'll usually get dessert because you're a missionary. I had asked my trainer, I was like, do you guys always eat dessert, or is it just because the sisters came over? Like, I can't tell. And it's just because the sisters came over. But they make a lot of like, sometimes it'll be like a pudding or like a mousse. They have this fruit there called maracujá, which is like passion fruit in English. And they'll make a mousse from it, and it is so delicious. But if you eat like the straight up natural juice, it's also a natural relaxant, so it'll make you go to sleep. So be careful with that. They have something called brigadeiro, which means brigadier. It's sweetened condensed milk boiled together with chocolate powder and butter. And then you kind of let it harden, and they'll like roll it into balls and like put it with sprinkles, or they'll just eat it straight out of the bowl. It's called brigadeiro because there was this brigadier who I guess like came through Brazil conquering or something like that, and that was his favorite dessert, and everyone wanted to get on his good side, so everybody made it. And that is also very good. And they'll have like popsicles that are like brigadeiro flavored and like everything. they have something called, depends on which city you're in, they call it different things. I learned it as like gelinha, which is like little ice. And it's kind of like a Go-Gurt tube, except it's like a thin plastic tube, usually clear plastic. And then inside, they can make it with water or with milk, mixed with like a juice or a flavoring, and they'll just freeze it. It's really good when it's hot outside and you've been walking all day and you're dying, and you just grab one for like 1 real or 2 reais and you just eat it, and it helps you cool down, and it's really tasty. And people will just sell things out of their house sometimes. So, I mean, you could just like buy like an ice cream from somebody's house. It's great. I love it. If you can't tell, I miss it a lot.
One of the things in Fortaleza that I love the most, I miss the most so much, is the fruit. They have so many different types of fruit. Even compared to other places in Brazil, they have a huge concentration because they're in the tropics. One of my favorites, I love passion fruit, maracujá. Oh, is it amazing. Be careful drinking the juice because it will make you sleepy, very sleepy. And so when members give it to you during lunch, just be aware. I loved it and I drank as much as I could, but oh, so sleepy afterwards. So anyway, so that's something to look out for. Goiaba, oh, excellent. Guava in Spanish, but they have it everywhere. And they make this weird paste stuff. It's called goiabada. And I actually finally found it here in Provo. So if you're going, and you're near a little market, a Mexican market or a Latino market, many times they'll have them. And you taste a little bit. It's kind of weird, but when you have it with whipped cream on top, even the non-sweetened, just the cream, oh, it's amazing. And so they have lots of fruit, lots of juice. Many times they'll either offer you soda for lunch, for a drink, or they'll make actual juice, and it's incredible. So lots and lots of fruit. I mean, I can't even go acerola, jaca, there's so many types. Weirdest, I just talked about one of my areas in Maranguape and the area Tabatinga. Every Friday, we had Noites Familiares, which are their version of family nights. There, they do them more as a group instead of just a family. But to that area, they had decided that they were going to do theirs on Friday, which is fine, it's great. We would get together and we would have churrasco, or Brazilian barbecue, and it would be coração de boi, which is bull heart. Oh, I love it so much. It's amazing. So don't be afraid of it. And then we would also drink tereré, which is similar to mate or chimarrão in the rest of Brazil and the rest of Latin America, except the way that we drank it, tereré was how they do it in Manaus, which is with cold lime juice. And so when you have it and you have it mixed in with this weird, it's like chopped up and dried alfalfa in a cup. And at first you'd be like, this is kind of weird and strange. But the tereré, oh, it is glorious. And I love it a lot. It's one of my favorite things from there.
It's rice and beans all day and every day. I mean, it's rice and beans for lunch, for dinner, if you have dinner. But anytime you go to a member's house, they will give you rice, beans, some sort of meat, probably a salad, and soda. That's kind of the standard. I mean, there are variations from that. It's not a hard and fast rule, but you'll always have rice and beans. And then beyond that, it's kind of to the members' creativity. But you'll grow to love it. I mean, it's good food. It might get monotonous after a while, but thankfully the variation in the other things can make up for it. There's a soda that every Brazilian missionary talks about called Guaraná. It's pretty delicious. I mean, it comes from a berry that we don't have here, the Guaraná berry, and it's a great way to get cavities. It's a great way to ruin your teeth just because it's so easy to drink so much of it. But there are, endless variations of Guaraná. I think there's about 7 major brands of Guaraná and, 10 minor ones. Probably the best meals, the actual meals that I had a lot of fried chicken. It's easy, it's cheap, it's good stuff. But the best meals I had were feijoada, which is like a black bean stew with every piece of the pork you can imagine put into it. If you get someone who's from the Northeast, like traditional Northeast, you might find an ear or a hoof or something floating in it. It's normal, don't worry about it, just eat it and and ignore it. But it's really delicious. It's really easy to get full on. And you always just keep eating more. There's also something called purin, which is like, I'm not sure how to describe it. They take like the juice of meat, the meat juice, I guess is a better way to say it. They take meat juice and they mix it in with a type of tapioca flour. It's called manioc flour. They're made from the same root, but they're slightly different in the way they're produced. And they make it into this paste. And I don't know why, but it's delicious. I mean, it's just this like meat paste. And you stick it on top of your rice and beans and you mix it in with everything and you eat it. It's just so good. That one's really easy to eat as well, just to keep eating and not stop. But the desserts are where you're going to get in trouble if you have to walk a lot that day. There's pujim de leche, which is like, I think they call it flan here. I don't know. It's like a little flan with syrup drizzled on it, and it's wonderful. It's rich. It's creamy. It's eggy. It's everything you'd ever want. They also have mousse, which is like mousse, but they make it out of fruit usually. So you'll have passion fruit mousse. You'll have strawberry mousse. You'll have lemon mousse, lime mousse. The distinction between lemon and lime in Brazil is very thin, if non-existent. It's pretty much the same fruit. Like if you try and tell someone about a lemon, they'll just be like, "Oh yeah, it's a lime." You're like, well, it's not a lime. It's kind of a yellow lime. All right, so it's a lime. Oh well, but they make lots of mousse out of that. Brazilians also love stroganoff, and it's a classic meal to give to the missionaries. And it's just, bits of meat in a nice creamy sauce, and you put it on top of the rice. You can have beans with it, but it's kind of strange. And then they'll put little shoestring potatoes on top of it. It's fantastic. It was always my favorite day whenever there was stroganoff, because it's just so good, and it fills you up so well. It's easy to make too.
Well, Brazilian food's awesome. I love it. We have I think my favorite thing was churrasco, which is the barbecue. And it's not like the barbecues here, although I love barbecue, American barbecues too. But there, they just put on meat and they put on salt, and you're good. And it's so good. So that was always a special experience when we had a churrasco. That was kind of like, oh, elders, I want to invite you over and I want to do barbecue for you guys. And that's kind of, wow, that's special. But mostly the meals there, almost every day on my mission, we had, like I said, the church is strong there. There's lots of members, and they love the missionaries. So pretty much every day we have lunch with a member. Lunch is their main meal. So we would never have dinner with a member unless it's a special kind of birthday party or a family home evening. Those are very common. But it's never a huge meal either. It's usually lunch is their huge meal, which kind of makes it hard because then you're stuffed and you go to the streets at 1 o'clock and the sun is just beating down on you, and it makes it difficult sometimes, but it's good. I like the food. Mostly you're going to sit down, and on the table there's going to be rice, there's going to be beans, and there's going to be sometimes some type of meat. And that's what you're going to get every day for 2 years. Rice, beans, some type of meat, whether it be chicken. In Ceará they have lots of chicken, but sometimes it's beef, and it's really good. I like it when they have linguiça, which is kind of like a sausage. But they also do lots of cool dishes. Just the other day we had my roommates and I, who also served in Fortaleza, we all went up to an old bishop that I served with. He moved here to the United States, and we had feijoada, which is kind of this bean dish when you put bacon in it and you put linguiça in it, which is like sausage, and lots of different meat. And it's just this black, really good bean dish, and you put it on rice and you just go to town. It's really good. I love it. It's thick though, so you can't eat too much of it. But it's super good. And then something they have there, especially in Fortaleza, is they have really good juices. It's a tropical climate, so they have juices and they make it, fresh right from the fruit, and it's really good. And they also have Guaraná, which is the big soda there, which is big all over Brazil. They have lots of different things for just Fortaleza, but I really love the food, and the members are so great. I mean, I was always I was amazed, but also humbled because a lot of times a lot of the members didn't have much, but we would come and it was like a feast for us. And we just, it really just so humbling to see the importance they give to missionary work. And it kind of helps you like, wow, like they take our calling seriously. And so we really got to work for them to really to see the love that they have for the missionaries, and it kind of is an incentive to be like, wow, I have to be the best missionary I can be because they give so much to us, and it's just really great. The members absolutely love having the missionaries over, so it's always a really special experience. They usually have their friends over, and it's great for a missionary opportunity too. So lunches were some of my best memories in Brazil was eating lunch with the members and incredible food, and I loved it. There's just so much good stuff, and the great thing I loved about it was it's kind of the members. It's their opportunity to kind of show us their culture too. So they take pride in it, and they really love giving us the local dishes. There's a few dishes that they like giving us foreigners because usually it's pretty gross, and even they don't like it that much, but it's kind of their tradition. It's kind of the things of a cow or things of a goat that no one really likes. But back in the day of ranching in Ceará is when people would eat it. So it's kind of their tradition. And they'd kind of offer it to us as, kind of like, oh, let's see their reaction. But that's always fun. I mean, that's part of the experience. And you got to try it. Why not? You're going to have a great drink, a fruit drink to wash it down. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I really loved enjoying, eating with the members was some of the best experiences of a mission, and investigators as well. And the investigators, oh, you're from the United States. Well, I'm going to invite you over. We're going to have a meal from Ceará, And so, the investigators a lot of times ask you for lunch or invite you to lunch too. And sometimes you got to talk to a member like, oh, I had an investigator invite me. Can we eat lunch with you this other day? And so sometimes you have to, say thanks to the members, but we have an investigator that invited us for lunch. It was the best of both worlds. So, really great experiences with food, and that's a big part of their culture as well as the food.
The food is very different. In Brazil, I probably could have taken a picture of my plate every day for lunch, and it would have looked the exact same. Because we always have rice and beans, obviously, and we would have a meat, some kind of meat. Usually it's chicken, sometimes it's beef. We'd have this pasta that was like, I don't know, it's just like dry pasta with a little bit of oil on it. And then have some kind of like salad, which would be like have beets, potatoes, and carrots all boiled together and then mixed in with mayonnaise. And so that was like the average lunch. But then they also had some other things that were a little bit different, their food there. Like I remember one time I ate, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like the cow and goat intestines and their like insides. It's like boiled in this stuff and it smells awful. It just, it reeks. But I remember this lady had it for lunch one time. I'm like, and it was interesting. I tried to eat it, but I couldn't hold it down. But I mean, I could swallow it, but that was just, I could only take one bite. I couldn't eat anymore. They just have different things like that, or like they eat a lot of like chicken feet. So I've eaten chicken feet and yeah. And they have, what are some other things that are different? They have a ton of fruits though. That's good. They have a ton of fruits I've never even seen before. And
are they good?
Yeah, they're really good. They eat a lot of fruit there as well. So the main meal is lunch. And so you have a huge lunch and then they eat dinner like later at night. It's like 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock or 9 at night. And it's just something smaller for dinner. Oh, they're tiny. They thought I was a giant. I'm only 5'6" or 5'7", and they would look at me like I was 7 feet tall. Because everyone there is a lot shorter, and they're like toothpicks, And so, yeah, Americans usually stand out quite a bit.
What you eat every day is rice and beans. Just that.
You get really used to it to the point that whenever I eat it again, my body has this reaction of like, this is what I'm supposed to be eating. Well, why was I eating anything else? Because I just got so used to it. I literally ate it every day. But and Brazilians will say that too, that they're like, if they don't eat rice and beans, they don't feel like they've eaten a meal. It doesn't feel full unless they've eaten rice and beans. They also would usually have pasta with it and some kind of meat most of the time, usually chicken. They have, they had rubacão, that's just kind of like a rice and cheese and like this certain kind of meat. They call it charqui. I think someone told me it was horse meat, but I don't think that's true. I don't know. And then the craziest thing they have in the Northeast is something called buchada, and it's literally like the stomach of a goat, and they put all of the like intestines and like goat organs and they cook it in it, and it smells like the worst thing ever. I never actually tried it. I almost did. We had it planned, this thing where I was going to eat it, and then I got transferred. But everybody swears it's just horrible except for the people that make it, and they're like, no, mine is the one that's not horrible. And then I never actually tried, so I don't know, but it doesn't sound too great. I think though the best thing in the Northeast was the fruit. They just have all the tropical fruits, even stuff I'd never heard of before. Some of it's kind of not great, some of it's really, really good. And something I really miss about it is that everywhere you went, from the fanciest restaurant to like someone's little hole-in-the-wall place, if you order juice, they make it. They go and they put the fruit in the blender and the sugar and the water, and they bring it out to you just like that. So it's like fresh juice everywhere, and it's the best. So I really miss that. I was hoping they would do that in Africa when I went to Africa, but they don't. It's a Brazil thing. And also it's a North Brazil thing. They have this fruit called açaí, and they eat it like it's a frozen ice cream kind of dessert thing. It's purple and just like a frozen slushy thing, and they put sweetened condensed milk on it and bananas and granola, and it's the best. And the first time you eat it, it's like this is weird and you can't handle it. And then once you get used to it, it's super addicting, and they don't have it here. They have acai like imitations, like in Jamba Juice sort of, and it's not the same thing. And so yeah, those are the things I miss the most. Probably the fruit. Also, they have padarias, like little bakeries on every corner, and you can get fresh bread every day and stuff like that. It's really great.
The most common Brazilian foods was the beans and the rice, and then there's always some kind of a meat, but it depends on what the meat is. In Ji-Paraná, it was mostly beef. In Maués, it was fish. Yeah, they're right on the river. Literally everybody was a fisherman. You could pull in a fish about that big, and you could buy one for about 7 reais. And that's about a 4-kilo fish, about 8 to 10 pounds of fish. So they really made good fish. It was really, really good stuff. Tambaqui is one of the more common fish that they eat. It's that big one. I've heard stories of 50 or 60 pound ones. So you're talking a fish about that big. Also, it's really nice about that fish is it doesn't have spines or anything. It doesn't have the little tiny bones that we have here in the trout. That one at least has ribs. So it's like you just slide the rib out of the meat and you've got a chunk of meat. It looks like chicken. It's about the size of a chicken breast, but it is really good. It's a really juicy meat. So fish, one of the other kind of a weird one that I had was the cow intestine up north by Venezuela. They just kind of made it into a soup with the macaroni, and you really couldn't tell the difference between the noodle and the intestine other than the taste. So it's just like, it's kind of a weird thought, but you get used to it. There are a couple places that I would eat liver, which at first I didn't like it that much. It kind of has a weird aftertaste, but there's other places where they make it really good. And in Cruzeiro do Sul, it was a lot of chicken. In Manaus and Cruzeiro, it was a lot of chicken and pasta. But then you'd also run across other stuff. Vatapá is something that they have from Bahia down towards the south of Brazil. It's kind of a bread type pudding. I didn't care for it too much because they like to put pepper on it and the spices, which I was not too much of a fan. But when they put it in front of you, you just eat it. And after a while, you don't even notice it anymore. It just gets really good. But one of my favorites was something they called feijoada. It's a black bean stew. They will literally, it's like they throw the whole pig into this stew. They'll put pig ears, pig intestine, pig meat, everything in there. They'll throw in the beans. They make this really, really good sauce that goes with the beans. And then they also throw like a hot dog, bratwurst, everything into this stew. And then when you get that out, you put that on a big old serving of rice. Just throw it on top, mix it all together, eat that with banana and farinha, which is like a cornstarch thing. You just kind of cut your banana up, get a chunk of banana, the rice, the feijoada. It is so good. It's kind of a bland taste. It is so good though. They're very versatile. They will make a dessert out of literally everything. I'd never tried sweetened like avocado as a dessert. I didn't know you could. I always ate it as guacamole. But they would put it in and make like a cream, a mousse out of it. And it was really good. There's a lot of fruits that you could be walking down the road and you can pull a fruit off of the tree and eat it. There's a lot of that, especially caju, mangoes. There's one that they call carambola, star fruit. It's just good stuff. They kind of advise you to stay away from it, but it's impossible to. You just got to pick who you got to buy it from. There's those people that's like, they don't keep it very clean or anything. You can see the dead cockroaches on the floor right there. It's just kind of a nasty place. And then there's the areas where like they're trying to keep it clean. And they're usually pretty good about keeping it clean. So I mean, I never had too much problem buying from the street vendors. I would usually buy the picolé, that little ice cream thing, or they would do the same thing with homemade ice cream bars on the popsicle sticks. So I would buy that stuff. They call it pão de queijos, cheese bread rolls, about that big. You can buy like 4 of them for $1. And they're pretty good. They drink a lot of soda and a lot of juice down there. Not so much milk, but a lot of soda and a lot of juice.
So the staple is rice and beans. And I love rice and beans. I could eat rice and beans every day for the rest of my life, and I would just be so happy. And then they usually have meat and salad and fruit and dessert. Usually that's how it goes. They serve a lot of soda, which is not super good for missionaries. So like, feel free to, if you're like a future missionary, feel free to ask for water or juice. As far as water goes, it kind of depends on where you're serving, if it's going to be safe or not, but your mission president will let you know. The desserts are really delicious in Brazil. Pretty much all the food is really delicious. There's only some strange food that I encountered, like cow stomach and chicken feet, and feijoada has all parts of pig in it, so you can find pig nose and pig ears and things like that, but I never had feijoada that had pig nose and pig eyes and things like that. The members like to feed you a lot, so if you give them your plate to serve you up, then you might end up with a very large mountain of rice and beans, like literally this tall. And pretty much everybody in Brazil, at least where I served, really likes to feed you. So even if they don't want to hear anything about your message, they'll still welcome you into their home and give you lots of food. And if you don't ask for seconds, then they might be offended. But it's really fun. It's a good culture. I've heard that it's good to avoid Japanese restaurants because a lot of times their meat is actually dog meat. So if you have a problem with that, then try to stay clear of Japanese restaurants.